Hey everybody, grumpy old man in a Dodge Charger, back for yet another episode. So in my previous episode, I ran down my top 10 Dodge movies, and I mentioned after I brought up the Fast and Furious series, I said that I wanted to make a separate video which dealt with that series as far as the Dodge cars and stuff like that. So, to kind of give a bit of a rundown or a breakdown, so in the very first movie, Toretto, he's driving his little RX-7, and it's all Supras and Jettas and all that kind of crap. And then we're introduced to a 1970 Dodge Charger, pretty much race prepped. It's caged, it's all aluminum interior, aftermarket gauges, it's got the aftermarket Recaro seats and everything, and most importantly it has a 426 cubic inch Hemi with a supercharger set up on it with a blower sticking right out of the hood. The very first time I saw this in theaters, I dragged a couple of buddies, non-car buddies there, and of course it's the scene where Brian says, well, what's the fastest you've ever gone in it? And he says, I've never driven it. It scares the shit out of me. Now, of course I had to laugh at this scene because the guy that up until this point has been driving a Mazda is afraid to drive the Hemi Charger. Moreover, why this was a very funny scene for me was because sitting out in the parking lot of the movie theater at the time was my personal 440 Dodge Challenger. I've mentioned it in other videos. I'm sure I'll bring it up again. So I've got my Challenger sitting out there in a sea of imports watching Fast and Furious for the first time. So that was pretty much the only Dodge as far as the first film was concerned. Then we had Too Fast, Too Furious. And of course with Too Fast, Too Furious, we didn't get the Charger, we actually had a Challenger. It was an orange 1970. It was a Hemi car in the film. Now, here's my issues with this. It wasn't an original Hemi car, which I don't really care. I mean, my Challenger wasn't an original 440 car. I had the drivetrain of a 69 Charger dropped into it. But the car itself, actually, one of the producers happened to be at a car show and saw the Challenger at this car show and basically walked up to the guy with their checkbook and said, good news, bad news. The good news is your car is going to be very famous. It's going to be in a movie, but the bad news is you're not going to own it anymore. And they basically just asked for his price right there on the spot and cut him a check for what he asked for. So off that went. Now, two things about the Challenger that bothered me in that movie. I mean, I really, really enjoyed the whole back and forth with the Yenko and the Challenger versus the Mitsubishi and the Spider, the Evo and the Spider, I guess it was. And the fact that they basically said there's no way they're going to beat these guys straight up. And of course the Challenger, where the slick Fonzie dude there bips the throttle and the whole car just shakes. Mine used to do that. It was just such an incredible feeling. But Brian, who's supposed to be a car guy, I mean, he's the buster. Buster is basically a term that means you're a wannabe, you're a pretend, you don't actually know, but you're pretending that you do. So when Dom calls Brian a buster, that's what it means. Well, the fact that he says that Hemi is putting out 425. 425 horsepower was the factory rating of the Hemi when they first came out, specifically because they were trying to help consumers avoid a much larger insurance premium. There probably wasn't a Hemi built that came with 425 horsepower. Anybody knows that is in the know for Dodge. Hemis came from the factory somewhere between 500 and 550 horsepower. I mean, there's a reason why they dominated the streets and everybody was afraid of the Hemi. Because factory-wise, like I said, 550 horsepower stock. Now, when we see it close up, we see it has chrome heads. It's kind of done up. So chances are this was not a stock Hemi Challenger. You know, Fabio or Fonzie or whoever it was that was driving the car with the mullet and the glasses, he doesn't seem like the type of guy that would just leave this car stock. Potentially that car was putting, let's say, between, conservatively, I'm saying 550, 600 horsepower. So no, the fact that they're street racing against an Evo Spider or a Mitsubishi Spider or whatever, oh, there's a Lancer right in front of me. Not a chance in hell. But the fact that Brian, who's supposed to be a car guy, says, well, it's putting out 425. No, it's not. Not on its worst day. It could blow 2 pistons and it still wouldn't be putting out a mere 425. That Hemi was pushing close to 600 in my estimation. So that's that. The other thing I didn't like about that car was the ejector seat nonsense. Took it a little too far into the silly nonsense kind of thing. All he really had to do was just cold cock the guy, open the door and push him out the door kind of thing. You didn't have to blow the door off with extra nitrous oxide kind of thing. And I mentioned before how I feel about people saying NOS. So, beautiful Challenger. I really, really liked it. I love the fact that they used a Challenger in the series, especially so early on. But yeah, the fact that it was, you know, those were my 2 issues with it. Then you get into the third one. The very end, we have Dom pull up in what looks like a Roadrunner. It was actually a Plymouth Satellite that was custom built called Hammer. There's been a few customized cars that have been used in the series that are customers purchase these, they have them custom built, and then they give them names. Joe Rogan has a CUDA called Sick Fish. The car at the end of Fast 7, that was called, that wasn't Tantrum, that was another one. Anyway, I digress. So the end of number 3, Dom pulls up and he's in Hammer. And then we go on from there. So the proliferation of using Mopars in the Fast series has kind of developed. Vin Diesel is now actually the spokesperson for Chrysler. They call it the Brotherhood of Muscle is their ad campaign, and Vin Diesel is dealing with that. So you get this wide-bodied Challenger SRT8, and it's all black and it's all done up. And then, of course, this is number 4, and of course he has the Charger as well, the black Charger. You know, it's supposed to be the Charger from the first one. The idea is, at the end of the first one, when he flips it, racing Brian, that Letty got it out of impound and she was fixing it up. So it was the same car. And then, of course, the end of it gets blown up in the tunnels coming through from Mexico. So that's been nuked. And then the very, very end, going after the prison bus, we get another, basically the same car, but just a different car, right? So it's a different, I guess Brian went out and bought another 70 Charger and did it all up exactly the same as the other one. So Fast 5 comes along, and we have the 70 Charger without the blower. Now, presumably there's still a supercharger under the hood, but it's actually a factory hood as opposed to the big cutout with the big BDS blower sticking out. Personally, I kind of like that. I liked the way they did that with the matte gray as opposed to the black, kind of that battleship dark gray. And it has like some really nice smooth lines. The lines of a 68 to 70 Charger are just beautiful. But moving on into the series, we kind of get these more cars coming around. Letty starts driving a CUDA. So it was nice to see a CUDA. It's a black AAR. I can't really call it a clone. I'll call it a tribute. Because the AAR CUDA, along with the TA Challenger, were a 1970 only model. And yet, in the couple of the films, when Letty is driving the CUDA, it's actually based on a 72 model, but it has the AAR hood and the AAR side stripes. So, in theory, I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't have the AAR engine, which is a 340 cubic inch engine with a what they call a 6-pack, which is 3 2-barrel carburetors. They called it a 6-pack. Actually, sorry, they called them 6 barrels for the Plymouth. 6-pack Dodge, 6-barrel Plymouth. So Dom could have just as easily dropped in a 346 barrel engine into this this Tribute Cuda. And then on top of that, we see a lot of newer Challengers and Chargers. So Fast 5 at the end there, the whole thing with they steal the cop cars. And then the funny thing is at the end of Fast 5, after they've stolen the police cars, when they're racing down the street, they are 2015 model Chargers. However, when they've painted them all black and they've got the big, bar cages around them and they're pulling the vault, those are the pre-versions. Those are the 2006 up until the 2011 version. They changed in 2011, actually. So 2010. So from 6 to 10, they were the one style. 11 to 14, they were the different style. And these, they basically just changed model year, yet they didn't say why or where they got them from, which is kind of weird because the 06 to the 010s had 425 horse, and the later model years had closer to like 475, 480. So they had more power. Anyway, so that was, personally, I think Fast 5 is my favorite of the series. Really enjoyed the Charger scenes. Then you come along to 6, and again, we keep showing that Dom has this wide body SRT Challenger. We have Letty's Cuda, and then at the end, with the world's longest fucking airstrip, which goes on apparently for about 40 miles, we have that whole scene with the military Chargers as well, the newer Dodge Charger. The good guys are rolling in those. Then you come along to the next movie, and of course in the meantime you have the 70 Charger going through different evolutions. It's a 4x4 giant knobby wheeled, and then it's this snow Charger with the giant fire breather at the back and stuff. And then in the last one, in Fast 8, we actually get the Dodge Challenger Demon in the opening sequence, which I thought was really cool. I like the fact that they continue to use newer brands of the Dodge cars. Here's my one issue, and I'll say this and then I'll wrap this up. The one issue I have, and I get why they do it, they have to do it for cost effectiveness, but all of the cars that they use in the Fast and Furious series, the Challengers, the Chargers, whatever, every single one of them has a 350 cubic inch Chevy crate motor, including Challengers and Chargers and stuff. So all of Dom's Chargers have a Chevy 350 in it. Now, something breaks down, you've got all the other cars as swapping engines, swapping parts and stuff like that. So for the production of the film, it makes perfect sense. As a Mopar faithful, the idea of seeing this really beautiful black 70 Charger on screen, knowing that it's powered by some dinky little 350 Chevy, and yeah, I get it, 350 Chevys aren't so bad, they're probably about 400 horsepower or something like that, but nonetheless, it just to me, it's wrong. But anyway, so that's basically my review of the cars in the Fast and Furious series of the Dodges. I certainly have a lot more to say, just don't have enough time to say it. So if you have any comments, if you want to share your thoughts, tell me I'm an idiot, whatever, feel free to go ahead. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and as always, be excellent to each other. Stay off my lawn.